In today's video, we have a significant update on the Erik Karlsson trade that we're looking for some time now, and also the possibility, could he end up terminating his contract? As much as that seems like a weird scenario, we're going to discuss today how it's possible. We also have some trade talk around the Sabres, Islanders, and Flyers. We have a signing in Philadelphia, some news from the waiver wire, as well as a big update from the Hlinka Gretzky U18 tournament. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of news and some trade talk to take a look at today. First up, I want to acknowledge the Hlinka Gretzky tournament came to an end earlier today. Of course, that's the U18 championship that we see every summer. Canada again wins the gold medal. The tournament's been taking place for 32 years, and it's the 24th time that Team Canada has come out victorious with gold. So a phenomenal finish as well in overtime against the Czech team. 2025 NHL draft prospect Malcolm Spence was the overtime hero. So it was a 2-2 game heading to OT. Canada comes out victorious. So it was a fun tournament. I didn't get to see a lot of it. I did see a lot of highlights and things like that. It looked like a lot of great action, some great prospects coming up through the ranks here in Canada and other countries as well. In the last 12 months, Canada has had a ton of success on the international stage. In the last 12 months alone, we've seen, like last August, for example, we saw the Canadian team win at the Hlinka Gretzky tournament. We also saw, of course, the completion of the 2022 World Juniors, which Canada won gold. And we also seen a delayed version of the Women's World Championships, which also, again, Canada came out victorious. And then in January, we saw the Canadian World Junior team once again win the gold medal at the World Juniors, and the U18 World Championship for the women also gold medal. And of course, in this past May, we saw the men win the gold medal at the World Championships, and then we just seen Canada again win the Hlinka Gretzky tournament. So that's a lot of gold medals for various levels of Team Canada hockey in the past 12 months. Certainly looks like Canadian hockey is in good shape for the foreseeable future, given especially at the lower levels how much they've been winning and having a ton of success. Lots of great prospects coming up through the ranks as well. So certainly nice to see, especially for Canadian fans. We also do have some NHL waivers news today. It's not the kind of waivers news we thought we might see, but nonetheless, we have the Arizona Coyotes putting Jean-Sebastien Day on unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination. That was a mutual agreement and a request from Jean-Sebastien Day so that he can be released to be able to go play and sign in Europe. So obviously Day's been in and around the NHL for quite some time now. He's mostly been a fringe player, spending a fair bit of time in the American Hockey League with, sporadic call-ups, you could say, at the NHL level. So certainly probably a more lucrative financial opportunity for him to play in Europe at this stage of his career. Of course, we were expecting the possibility, at least, that we could have a Penguin player on waivers for the purpose of being bought out, and that did not come today. Of course, today was the beginning of their buyout window that was activated from the Drew O'Connor RFA signing a few days ago. Of course, their second buyout window will go through the end of the weekend here, so it's still something that could happen tomorrow. I know Elliot Friedman talked about a few things on the NHL Network in the past 24 hours or so about looking at maybe Sunday being a day we could get some clarity on what the Penguins are doing with their buyout window, as well in regards to the Erik Karlsson deal, which we're going to talk about a little bit further here in just a few minutes' time. But certainly, don't be surprised if we do have a potential buyout this weekend, but nothing came from it yet today. Now, on to some news in Philadelphia. We had a signing announcement where they've signed goaltender Sammy Erson. He gets a 2-year contract extension valued at $1.45 million for an average annual value. He appeared in 12 games for the Flyers last year. Stats weren't overly great, but then again, the team in front of him didn't have very much success either. So as much as, Sammy Erson gets a decent extension, and it looks like from what we've seen and heard, the Flyers are quite fond of him from what they've seen since he's been in their organization, even though he only had a limited amount of NHL time. It seems like in the next probably a year or so, he might be their starter, but I would think at the possibility that he's definitely going to be a full-time NHLer. So you have to wonder if this could lead to another subsequent move. We know Cal Peterson, they picked him up from Los Angeles, and they took on a full $5 million cap hit. He's got 2 years left on his contract. And then Carter Hart, who's been their starter and goaltender of the present and future for some time now, has 1 year left on his deal. Now, of course, a lot of speculation and rumors around Carter Hart leading, I'd say, more so around the end of the regular season and the early part of the offseason. We haven't heard much on his front. It's been fairly quiet around that player when it comes to some trade speculation as of late. And I suspect that a part of that could be that we don't have the results yet, which I had mentioned here in the last couple of days on the channel, speculating that I honestly, and this is just me wondering out loud, I have no inside source telling me that it's going to happen, but I honestly question whether or not we could see an announcement sometime over this weekend. Now, I know in many parts of Canada it's a long weekend as well, so maybe it gets delayed to the first of the week. I don't know, but a lot of speculation that the NHL investigation's over. They've kind of determined what they are going to move forward with, and like I said, some reporters are out there saying they've even got names of players that are expected to face lengthy suspension. So I would think that with that team, players on that team, with Carter Hart being one of them, that a trade involving any of them, or if you're unsigned, which a few of them are right now, that nothing's really going to happen with those players, I don't think, until there's clarity on that situation. Now, although some players from that team did get new contracts this offseason, so you got to wonder if those teams are confident and clear that those players weren't involved, or is it a case where they just figured they'll take the chance and sign the player because they'd like to keep them, and if they were involved in facing suspension, then obviously they'll deal with the consequences later. I mean, I don't know how much internally with each team what they've been doing, if anything, like what are teams doing in regards to this? Are they getting any kind of heads up? Do they know? Do they not know? I really don't know what they know and what they don't, but at the end of the day, I wondered if a Carter Hart trade might have to wait until he's essentially cleared, assuming he is, from all this 2018 investigation stuff. So once that seems to come, I would not be surprised if we do possibly see a Carter Hart trade, if not maybe early in the season or later in around camp or something like that. There's going to be teams looking for help in between the pipes, that is for sure, and lots of speculation that they were open to moving him, so we'll see if getting another goalie like Erson signed. Plus, of course, there's the Russian goalie that they're waiting to see if he's going to be coming to North America, because he's signed as well for last year, had to stay in Russia to complete his military service, and then of course the KHL team signed him anyways, even though he already had an NHL contract, and that's under investigation and review by the IIHF right now. So at some point, whether it be now or soon, it's expected that the Flyers will be getting him too. So obviously they have a bunch of goalies here, and it could lead to a Hart departure. So we'll see if what that means for him. We do have reports from Kevin Kurz of The Athletic, who covers the New York Islanders, in his latest one of his latest articles, suggesting that the Islanders are quite likely going to be looking to move between now and the beginning of the season of Ross Johnston. Now, of course, Johnston is kind of a one-dimensional player. Like, he's not a kind of guy who can take a regular shift and fight a lot. Now, there are some guys in the league that clearly are known as fighters, but many of them can serve other roles like on the team, and they can play a shift, a regular, they can play more and serve more of a purpose. So they're not just there for, a couple of minutes on the ice and a fight or two like we used to see back, 20 years ago. But Johnston, I don't know that he can really do much else. Like he does kind of have the reputation of sort of being a one-trick pony. Now, I think at one point he was signed because Lou signed him longer term. He still has 3 years left at $1.1 million. And I think the thought process behind that was they weren't sure how long Matt Martin was going to go. I know he had dealt with an injury a few years back as well. And I think it was kind of like Matt Martin insurance. Should Martin not be able to continue, or if he ended up, having a shorter career, then obviously he could be there to kind of take that role. But it never really happened. And Martin's still playing. He's still, really contributing in the way that he always has. So at the same time, it's kind of make Johnson expendable. However, at $1.1 million, he can be fully buried in the minors. So it's going to be a tough contract to trade with 3 years on it. But the fact of the amount, it is fully bearable in the American Hockey League to get full cap relief. So it might be possible. If anything, the Islanders could move him just to kind of free up a roster spot. But if they don't feel like they need to, if they can, if it's from a cap perspective, they can get the relief. So it's not a big deal. I mean, at this point in his career, like I said, he's going to collect that money one way or another. He's a huge guy, 6'5", 235 pounds, from Atlantic Canada, Prince Edward Island, from Charlottetown. Like he's a good guy. I mean, I know a lot of people that do know him, and he's a well-respected player, especially in the Maritime area where there's not a ton of NHLers that make it from this part of the country. But he's just a player that I think the Islanders don't really need, and according to Kurz, they are looking to see if they can move on from him. So we'll see if that actually comes to be or not. In Buffalo, reporter Lance Lasowski is reporting that we should expect to see a trade involving the Sabres sometime before the start of the season, involving at least one defenseman. I would not be shocked if they can pull off multiple deals, to be honest, or depending on who the player is. Maybe it's one bigger deal, but we know that the Sabres are not done looking for another top 4D. Amongst all the defensive prospects in their system, I think they've been quite pleased with, obviously, the development of Rasmus Dahlin, one of the top D in the league, and Owen Powers trending on a major incline as well. Like he's nowhere near his ceiling yet, but he's done very well in a short span. They're obviously quite pleased with Mikhail Samuelsson, who they signed long-term as well. And then after that, there's kind of a bit of a drop-off. They have some guys who are kind of like, fill in as that number 4, but they're not real pleased with having a guy who can fill in that role and really be real solid. They like to upgrade. So they've also brought in guys who can play third pair minutes as well, like Erik Johnson, who's a great NHL veteran, Stanley Cup champion. Obviously, they signed Connor Clifton as well. But besides them, they still have guys like Jacob Bryson and Ilya Lyubushkin. They have Joka Haru. So it's expected here according to the Lasowski's report, that either Bryson or Lyubushkin become expendable. They don't have much time on their contracts anyway, and maybe they're part of a trade to bring them that top 4 defenseman. At the very least, they could be moved just as a cost-cutting, roster spot opening type of deal. But if they can find that top 4D, I know there was some rumblings that they were having some conversations, or at least interested in Noah Hannafin out of Calgary, who's obviously made it known that he's not going to extend, so he's going to move on one way or another from the Flames within the next year. Either he'd be traded or walk as a UFA. So I suspect he's going to be dealt at some point. I don't know if he'd extend in Buffalo or not, but I know that is a player that they were looking at least before. We'll see what things materialize. But either way, a D trade of some sort in Buffalo before the start of the season is likely, according to Lasowski. And I also want to touch on Erik Karlsson. Now, I'd call this a fairly significant update. A couple of things here. Like I said, we're expecting, and it doesn't mean it's going to happen for certain, but Elliot Friedman on the NHL Network on Friday was saying that he expected to be at least, not a guarantee, of course, but he thought it was quite likely, quite possible, that we might get a significant update on the Erik Karlsson trade this weekend, and that obviously the Penguin buyout window that's opening now could play a major role in that. So certainly there seems to be three to four major talking points here that we've heard, and to make this happen, the Pens buyout window, now that it's here, needs to be used. Most likely Mikael Granlund being the most likely player. Now, I know he did not fit well during his time in Pittsburgh last year. Most people would agree that it's not the right fit, not a good contract for Pittsburgh, and they should find a way to move on from him. Apparently, I've seen some reports, though, suggesting that Kyle Dubas, and we know Kyle Dubas is very analytically driven, apparently has been known to be quite fond of this player, and that he attempted to bring him to Toronto on multiple occasions, but never worked out a deal. So if he's fond of the player, some people are questioning whether or not he would feel any differently about that Granlund contract and might try to figure out a way to give him another chance in Pittsburgh and make it work, so that maybe he's not bought out. I guess we'll have to see, but ultimately that cap hit is causing him some big issues right now and trying to make upgrades at other parts of the team. So we'll really see. We also know that Kyle Dubas, because he said it publicly on a few occasions, isn't real fond of buyouts in general, and obviously not fond of having a lot of dead money in your cap space. So clearly we'll see where things go on that front, but it looks like from their cap perspective that they're most likely going to need to use that buyout on him or Petrie for a big trade to take place to upgrade the roster, such as Erik Karlsson. The second part is moving on from Jeff Petrie in one way or another, either being bought out or finding a way to move him within the parameters that he'll let you, because he does have a modified no trade. I don't know where he could go. I would suggest maybe a team like Chicago might be an interesting option for him. They certainly have the space and could take a sweetener on. I don't know what exactly they would expect Pittsburgh to pay up to do that. And as far as what's involved in going to San Jose, should they pull off an Erik Karlsson trade, it's quite likely, from what I've seen here from Sharks reporter Sheng Peng, that they're looking for a defenseman and they're looking for a prospect like Samuel Poulin. Now, Samuel Poulin is a prospect that's never really, so far at least, he's a former first rounder from a few years back, and at this point in pro hockey hasn't really taken off yet, largely due to injuries. I think it's fair to say that's kind of held him back, and it could be an interesting project for the Sharks, and obviously not going to be the centerpiece if they can pull off a deal, but I do think it's likely that they ask for him to be included. They're going to want a defenseman or two, so I think quite likely Marcus Pettersson and or both of him and Ty Smith be included, and it wouldn't be shocking if they threw in something else, like I would say probably a first-round pick. So, you know, if you get a first-round pick, a former first-round pick prospect, and a couple of defensemen, to me, that's a fair contract. And, of course, San Jose likely have to eat some money. That's likely the process we're going to see here to make that happen, if it's going to go down in the way that most people have been expecting for some time. This information from Sharks beat reporter Sheng Peng it suggests we could see a completely different process here. And could the Sharks and Karlsson decide to mutually agree to terminate his contract? Now, that might sound like crazy, and I can just see a few people now watching this video going, oh, that's not going to happen. Sharks are not going to terminate Karlsson. He's not going to let them do that. Why would he leave so much money on the table? Because, okay, think of it like this. Before you leave all those comments and think it's an absolutely ridiculous, crazy concept, open your mind for a second, okay? He signed an 8-year deal with the Sharks after being traded there from the Senators, valued at $92 million, okay? So he has over $11.5 million cap hit for his average annual value. Now, the contract, and I'll show you the breakdown from Cap Friendly on the screen so you can follow along. You can see here, and we're 4 years into this deal, so he's halfway. It's very much front-loaded. He's been paid way more than half of the money. Okay, so even though there's half the time in the contract, it's the cap purposes, it goes by the average, broken down over the total money over the total time. What's the average? That's how the cap works. But we know from a year-to-year perspective, there are some rules around how much it can fluctuate and whatnot, but it's, you know, very much not the same year after year, and it can vary a fair bit. So clearly, between the bonuses and the salary, he's been paid a lot. So right now he has 4 years left, and if you look at the 4 years remaining, it totals $39 million in actual cash. So Erik Karlsson's already been paid $53 million of the $92 million on this deal, leaving $39 million left. And as you can see, the way they have it structured, which is just like we talked about the Tom Wilson contract, it's structured in a way that it becomes buyout proof. If you look at the final 2 years, which is on any player who's aging, the longer you go, the more likely that you're possibly going to decline and the team might consider a buyout. That's when all of a sudden the big bonuses kick in the last 2 years. So therefore, there wouldn't be a whole lot of salary cap savings, because when it comes to cap numbers and how they calculate the buyouts, it's salaries that's the big driver there. So if the money's being paid out in bonuses, that part's pretty well buyout proof. So clearly, his agent was smart and wanted to make sure that he was going to get all that money as much as possible, and it was not going to happen, right? So you get the trade protection, so you can't move anywhere. You get the big bonuses in the final year so that it's buyout proof, and you have full control, and he does have that. So he has $39 million left. So if he were to terminate that and walk away from $39 million, based on how he played last year, do you not think there would be a team in the NHL that he'd be happy to go to that would sign him for a 4-year deal at $9.75 million? Because that's what it would take for him to recoup his money. That, to me, is not crazy at all. I mean, he's making, like I said, that would be just shy of $2 million less on the average annual value than he's getting today. So if San Jose retains some money, like, it's likely that his cap hit was going to be around, $8 to $9 million anyway, right? So really, and the other part of this you got to remember is we've heard Erik Karlsson speak publicly on this whole thing on multiple occasions between his time. I think he did an interview in Sweden. He's talked about it in North American outlets as well. He really wants to win, and he's made that perfectly clear that his career, he understands that the NHL career for players is a finite period of time. Winning is, it's difficult, and you don't have a lot of time left. It goes by quick, and that's where he's at. He wants to get to a team where he has a legit chance in the next few years to win a Stanley Cup before it's over, and that way he can't say, listen, the last 5-6 years of my career, I didn't even make the playoffs. Had no chance, and now I'm probably done. He doesn't want that to happen. So he's largely driven by the fact that he wants to win a Stanley Cup. So that's good. From a team perspective especially. We've also heard him say publicly that he's had conversations with a variety of teams. Now, we've only heard speculation about some of these teams being in the trade rumor mill. So, like, for example, we heard Karlsson talk when doing his interviews. He's admitted publicly that he's spoken to Carolina, that he's spoken to Pittsburgh. He also mentioned Toronto. He mentioned Seattle. They asked him if he'd be amicable to return to Ottawa where he used to play, and he said he would absolutely be open to that. So, he's mentioned 5 or 6 teams, but yet the only teams really linked to him in the trade rumor section that you ever hear any speculation on is Pittsburgh and Carolina. And for the most part, Carolina's been out of it recently. So it's either seems like a trade to Pittsburgh is really the only real option right now from a trade perspective to get him out of San Jose. I honestly think if Erik Karlsson was confident that he wouldn't really lose any money, even if he lost a tiny little bit and he had to sign a little bit less, do you think Erik Karlsson, who's made a ton of money in his career and is more than financially stable, would sacrifice, $5 million if he could win a Stanley Cup? That wouldn't shock me in the least if he signed and maybe it was 4 years at, 8.5 or something like that. Because I can see him giving the team that he really wants to be on a little bit of a savings to make sure that they can properly, align the team to have the best chance to win. So to me, it's not insane. In this article from Sheng Peng, going over this scenario, he talked to multiple executives around the NHL asking if they thought this was a real possible scenario. Some of them didn't agree and thought that it probably wouldn't happen because I guess they just didn't see it happening. Some thought maybe it could, but he did get some resistance on the idea from some executives. But obviously there were some people he talked to that acknowledged that, hey, maybe this could happen. So I wouldn't completely rule that out because he's made it pretty clear he does not want to go back to San Jose. And as we've heard from other NHL reporters like Elliot Friedman, and the quote from Frank Saravalli was essentially teams told the Sharks, listen, we'll take Karlsson off your hands. We're very interested. Call us in August when you're willing to make maybe a change in your price because we're not giving you much. If we're taking on a big contract, you're not getting much of a return. And the rumors about what San Jose wanted has to change or it's not going to happen. And Really? Do they want to have an untenable situation on their hands where, is a really disgruntled player on their team? I just don't know how long they want to drag this on. So we'll see. I mean, we've seen other teams do it, like the Coyotes with Chychrun, and it got done before things got too nasty there, but you just got to wonder. I wouldn't be shocked to see this scenario happen. What do you think? And if so, where would he sign? If he had to pick up a litter being a UFA, where could he go? Where's he going to win the Stanley Cup? What's his most likely scenario? Does he return, home to Ottawa? I mean, obviously they'd have to clear some space. Is he going to still go to Pittsburgh and sign as a UFA? Would he go to Carolina and sign for a different contract? Would he consider the Leafs? All these teams that have been mentioned. Would he go to Seattle? Let me know what you think down in the comments if it's possible, and where does he go from there. Hopefully we get some clarity on this Karlsson situation over the course of this weekend here, next couple days. And because if we don't, I'm starting to lose faith that it's gonna actually come together. So we'll see. But like I said, a Penguin buyout, if that's triggered in the next day, it's going to be a big sign that they're pushing hard to get it done. So let me know what you think in the comments. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.